Put this closer. Oi, hello everybody. Welcome back to another one of my art videos. This will be a bit of a tutorial. So, I've made this video once or twice, this kind of video at the very least, of like, today I'm going to be drawing a hand, as you can probably see from the title of the video, So, why am I doing this for like the second or third time, blah blah blah? Mostly because I uploaded a video that was titled that for, 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember exactly how long ago it was, but it was quite a while ago. But today, I have a cool microphone, cool computer, better art skills. It's been a couple years after all, and I have somewhat of a better setup today. And besides, I feel like doing an art tutorial, and I basically made the bare bones kind of tutorial for that, if that makes any sense. I didn't get over my stutter, by the way. I don't know if I'll ever get over that, though. I'll just not comment about it aside from the time that I just did just now. So first things first, you need, like, a good point of view. Usually, if you know how to do it, you don't really need all the extra steps. So, don't worry about it once you do get the hang of it. But first and foremost, we need a good old, whatever the shape this is. I think it's a rhombus. I think it's just a simple little rhombus. A non-consistent shaped kind of square. Well, a square is a consistently shaped, congruent object. This is probably just a normal little rhombus. So it's important to figure out which hand it is. This, of course, is the right hand. This is the left. Now there's a difference there, and it makes a very important, kind of things. You can't just make a square and expect it to always work 9 times out of 10, because hands are just not built that way. Hands are built at a bit of a curve. Like, look at, let me take this off for a second. I usually wear this when I'm drawing with a pencil because, it feels more comfy. This is the right hand. Notice how, like, if you remove all of the fingers, like, no fingers there, and you just look at the palm, like, no thumb, no fingers, no nothing, you can see that it's not a perfect square from the wrist to, the place where the fingers and the palm divide. It's more of, like, a curve kind of downward once you get to, like, the crevice of the middle finger and the ring finger. So it's very important that you realize that. Sorry, I just needed to put this back on. Because squares are very different from whatever this is. So we can see that where things, divide. Where the rightmost finger, on the right hand at least, is the index finger, and the leftmost finger is the pinky. And then, of course, to the side here, it doesn't exactly draw from there because there's kind of like a line that curves a bit off tangent before the thumb actually starts to, become a thumb. More on that in a second. But the actual division of fingers here involves more of, like, dividing all of this into fourths. Try to be as consistent as possible. Keep all of these as even as possible. Probably not the best, but it makes a point. most people who aren't artists probably won't notice. That's a very important thing to notice, is that between artists can really tell the difference in mistakes of like other artists. But when you're not an artist and you're just reading a comic book and you're like, oh wow, this is a really good art. Meanwhile, someone else can say, oh, that person has like a very obvious like, you know, difference in their eyeball placement, and it looks kind of weird. Not everybody works the same though. Some people aren't artists but can still tell these mistakes, maybe like biologists or whatever, or just, you know, really perceptive people. But more on that sometime else. But all in all, it's still important to figure out, you know, good line divisions, because this is how we're going to understand how the fingers work, where the fingers go. Again, this might not be the best way to, you know, whatever the words are. This part, like the side of the hand, is not just a straight line, obviously. It's also kind of a bit of a curve. And not just any curve, but it kind of curves a little bit up top, and then it really curves quite a bit more once you get to the bottom half of the hand. And then we actually start drawing the fingers. Fingers are divided into 3 little parts that are of different sizes. This is where things get really tough, because it gets really complicated really fast. First and foremost, the first crevice of each finger, aside from like the pinky in a way, because the first division of crevices are pretty much the same size throughout all fingers except aside from the pinky and the thumb. So you want to keep that in mind. Let's draw like a line through the middle. This obviously isn't going to be the final product. We're going to keep it as consistent as possible. These lines are the same size, but since they, you know, divide from different regions, it's going to look like the index finger. Is it, though? I think I made a mistake here. Mistakes are a part of life. It's a part of life. Because if you look at your hand, actually, middle finger would probably be a little bit further. But I guess it depends on how you look at your hand, in a way. This isn't something I really paid attention to before. Either way, though, let's just make some divisions here. Make a somewhat of a rectangle here. And then, you know, a curved line here. Another rectangle that's slightly smaller than the first. And then finally, the tip of the finger. This obviously doesn't look as fingerific as it should, but that's alright. This is just the sketch part. This is the tutorial. And then there, and then finally, there's the middle finger. Correct anything if you make a mistake, as I am doing. There's the ring finger. And the tip. And then, of course, the pinky should be the smallest of all of them. This also means the thinnest. So try not to make your pinky finger too fat. And there we go. Looks pretty fancy so far, doesn't it? We can get rid of these lines, I'm pretty sure, right about now. Because the palm does not have a weird division of stuff, unless you press your entire hand up against a fence or something. Which, don't do that, because that probably wouldn't be very comfy. Anyways, though, Now we can go on to the thumb, which the thumb operates a bit differently than the other fingers, because the tip of the thumb, well, first off, the tip of the thumb is a lot more curvier and a bit more sideways. Also, the thumb only has one crevice instead of two. And then get rid of the excess lines. Get rid of some of these lines. And then, finally, this isn't the perfect looking hand, obviously. But we will continue with all the details. So first things first, you'll notice, some mistakes here. The thing of the thumb, this part of the thumb here, it's a little small. You can look at your own hand and you'll find out. You can probably lengthen it a little bit more, and then you can get rid of any more excess lines. Continue making mistakes until you figure out what works best for you and your style of art. Now, then we can start making like the palm. There's like a bit of a circle within here, but only really like the upper leftmost side of it really counts. And then there's usually like a line right about here, but it's a very faint line, so you don't need to draw the entirety of it. I usually draw the entire line first and then erase certain aspects to give it, a bit of transparency. There's also sometimes a line here, but all hands are different, so it might not look the same on every hand. Just keep in mind, looking at your own hand might be a good way to learn, but it's not always going to be as accurate as possible if you're drawing different people with different, hand shapes. You can see my hand shape. It's not the same as everybody's. It's not even the same as my right hand. There's some weird stuff going on here. So, it's very, very odd. So, and then afterwards, you can draw in the wrist if you wish. There's a line that separates the wrist from the hand itself. There's also a bit of like a bone here. I don't know what the bone's called, but I do know it is probably a bone. Now, then we get into actually, actual fists and stuff like that. You really grip your fist like that. Now, you can see, okay, let me get this as straight as possible. You can see, it's pretty straight, pretty accurate with what we've got here. Difference with fists, though, is that it doesn't just kind of cup in like that. Like, this is very uncomfortable. People don't do this. People usually do more of like this. Now notice how the pinky and ring finger kind of fold inwards, like woo, instead of the ring and the index and middle finger that kind of go relatively more straighter than the other two, while these two kind of cup inwards rather than full on downwards. This is important to note because it's really easy to draw a hand that looks, again, if you use the same shape, you can do something like this. And this just isn't right. First off, we're missing the thumb. Yeah, you see this? This is bad. We don't like this. We do not own this fist. This is a bad fist. Which sounds like an interesting villain name. I should probably tuck that one away for whenever I actually start publishing my story. But this is bad. Let's just bad with two D's. DD, double D. Double D bad. This is double D bad, okay? Now, what is not double D bad is if, again, we cup our two fingers inward. So how will we do that? Snowshine, tell me, how do we actually do that, then? Well, again, let's use the same rhombus-esque shape that we did before. Of course, not a square, but whatever this rhombus thingy is. I was a bit wrong the first time. It's probably more close to this, where it kind of tops in where you think the index and middle finger crevices kind of meet. But as for, like, how it'll work, first things first, let's draw two lines that kind of resemble the edge of the middle finger and the first edge of the index finger. And then, of course, draw a line that separates the two of them. And then we draw another line that cup a bit more inward. This one's probably not good, but again, this is why I'm drawing in pencil and not in pen or, God forbid, Sharpie. Now, here we go. Here's a bit less bad, double D bad. Now, of course, what makes it good is a good old thumb. Now, of course, because I am so fabulously fantastic, I know how to, draw the thumb on there. But not everybody's fabtabulously fantastic, not to toot my own horn, but, everybody has their level of skills when it comes to art. I have done this over and over again. It's not a talent. Anybody who says it's a talent, probably lying. Because, like, art is a very learned skill. Nobody's talented at it. Now, you can kind of, again, figure out where you want your thumb to be. And then where it crevices. I want it to crevice from here. So instead of going outwards, we want it to go inwards. So we're going to do this. Again, this is the middle of the line, similarly with what we did the first time. This is just how we're doing it from here. And then you kind of draw a line that's more curvier, since we're cupping the thumb instead of bringing it straight out like this. This is kind of what that would look like. Instead, and then a relatively straight line inwards. And finally, the actual palm itself, which is a lot more defined, since there's a lot of stuff like, okay, there we go. So there's a lot more stuff going, like, pushing into it, so it's a lot more defined. And then we add in all the details, fix any mistakes. And we do that other line that we did the first time. Erase any excess lines. And also, from this view, we can kind of see the knuckles. So we want to also draw those. Knuckles are fun, because they're usually just like a weird little pyramid kind of shape. Although it depends on what view it is. If you're looking at them from like this kind of angle, it's more of like a hexagonal shape, really small hexagonal shape, and then like a line through the middle, and then, erase to give it some more transparency. Unless you're really angry, then you want that to be. It's usually also a bit more circular until you get to the crevice lines. But from here, you kind of give it some of that first line treatment. First two fingers probably look a little different. Again, because although they're likely bigger and they're not cupping in as deep as the other two fingers. So now we can draw in where the back crevice lines are. We're using the word crevice a lot because hands have those. Now we can do that. And when we figure out where the crevice lines are, we can kind of add in some more curvature. And because of how the index finger and middle finger are placed here, we'll do that. And then, of course, fingernails! I like fingernails. I don't know about you. They be pretty delicious when you're stressed. I'm kidding. Don't bite your fingernails, kids. That's me being a bad influence on YouTube. So this looks, it's not the best one, but I think I've made a point or two as great as possible. Again, if you make a mistake, you can find your mistake and then you can fix the mistake. Make it look as fabtabulous as possible. There we go. So there's a hand. It's a little bit different from the back of the hand, but it's basically the same shape. Reverse it for the other hand, or reverse it if you're looking at the bottom of it. Hands can be good use for references, but it's also not a good habit to make, especially since, you're probably going to be using one of your hands to draw it, unless you draw with your feet, which, some people do. I'm not going to judge them. Some people don't have hands to draw with, so I'm not going to judge anybody who doesn't have any hands to draw with, because then they'd have to use their feet, unless they don't have feet at all, which, then you'd have to draw with your mouth. If you don't have your mouth, that you might want to get that checked out. You kind of need that. So anyways, this is still bad, but this is better. This is good. We want this. We need this. This is also bad. We don't like squares. Squares are not what hands are made of. Hands are made of weird little rhombus shapes that peak around here. Okay? So, anyways, though, with that in mind, there's a lot more to go with hands, like side views, because, like, then it's a lot more, more weird shaped. I'm still practicing with a lot of different hand shapes, because, stuff like this tends to happen. But that's why it's important to figure out where your mistakes are, and then fix them to make them look as fab-tabulous as possible. Then, of course, the knuckles. So anyways, though, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I think my sister's cat is currently playing with a Lego or two that fell on the floor. So I'm gonna go check up on that. Hopefully you learned something today. And, I'll see you guys in another episode. Unless, before this episode and the next comes a D&D stream or whatever. Because I do upload those on here. But anyways, though, thank you for coming. And peace. Now I just need to need to figure out how to navigate this thing from this weird angle.